AITA for not wanting to have lunch on Saturdays with my grandparents anymore? I am not oop. Oop is you, whatever whenever. Originally posted to R2 Hot Takes. AITA for not wanting to have lunch on Saturdays with my grandparents anymore? Trigger warnings. Controlling behavior and emotional manipulation. Less than. And NBSP. Original post October 7th, 2023. My husband, 23M, and I, 23F, moved a few months ago back to the city where I grew up. Specifically, we moved pretty close to my grandparents. My grandparents had been alone for many years since all their children and grandchildren had ended up moving away for different reasons quite far from where they live. So knowing that we were going to move near them was a great joy for them. Especially for my grandmother. My grandparents were so excited about it that they asked us to please see each other at least once a week so they could have regular contact with us. My husband and I work from Monday to Friday, so we decided to dedicate part of our Saturdays to spending time with my grandparents. We talked to them and came to the conclusion that we would spend Saturday mornings with them at their house and have lunch together. My grandmother was fascinated by the idea since she loves to cook. She has always told us how much cooking de-stresses and relaxes her and how she almost couldn't do it because it was just the two of them and she hardly needed to cook. We still asked them to please let us know if they needed us to bring the food and/or dessert on any Saturday to prevent my grandmother from cooking too much. My grandmother told us that she didn't need us to do that at all, and she asked us not to even mention the fact that we brought food on a Saturday. Despite all this, my grandfather didn't seem to have any problem with this. So we started going to see them every Saturday. The first few months everything seemed to be going great. We really enjoyed each other's company and we took the opportunity to help my grandparents with many of their technological problems, such as how to use their smart TV or mobile phones properly. However, as time went by, my grandfather began to make some comments behind my grandmother's back, such as that it was too much for her to have to cook for 4 people every week, or that they didn't have that much money to spend in that much food every week. I have to clarify that my grandparents have a fairly high standard of living and that money is the least of their worries. My husband and I somewhat ignored his comments since my grandmother seemed very happy and she always let us know how having us there every Saturday helped her improve a lot with her depression. However, 2 months ago my grandfather asked us one Saturday afternoon after lunch to go with him to the city center. When we were about to go back to our house, he told us that we couldn't continue like this and that my grandmother was really being affected by our weekly Saturday visit. He basically made us understand that it was our fault that my grandmother was more tired, sad and depressed, as if my husband and I were being a burden to them. My husband and I told him that we could change our weekly visit to monthly and that we could bring food for everyone. My grandfather asked us to be the ones to tell my grandmother and made us promise to never tell her that he had talked to us about this topic. That same day at night my grandfather called us and told us to please not stop going every week, because my grandmother was going to go into an even greater depression if we stopped going. My husband and I didn't know what to do and began to feel quite uncomfortable on our weekly visit to their house. 3 weeks ago my grandfather came to our house to talk some things with us. He told us that he had tried in every way to please everyone, but that it was definitely too much of an expense for them to have us there every Saturday and that we had to stop going every week. My husband and I agreed in a coordinated manner. After all, we were finally going to be able to have Saturdays free for ourselves. So we didn't give the matter any more importance. On Friday of that same week my grandparents called me on speaker to ask us what we wanted to eat the next day at their house. I couldn't believe it. I told them in a polite way that we wouldn't be able to go to lunch with them for several weeks, but that we would stop by on Sundays to see them quickly in the morning. When I hung up the phone, I received a message from my grandfather letting me know how disappointed he was in me for making my grandmother feel so bad about our weekly meal at their house. I sent him a voice note telling him that we were going to be busy on Saturdays for real and that I was just doing what he asked of us. My grandfather deleted the messages from our conversation on WhatsApp. Since then, 3 weeks ago, we have not gone to eat at their house again. My parents and my husband say I'm right, but a part of me feels bad that my grandmother believes that we are the ones who don't want to go and be with them, when in reality it is my grandfather who has forced us to take this step. AITA update. I'm meeting my grandmother tomorrow to talk. I told her I'll take her shopping and we'll go out for breakfast. I'll update you with whatever happens next. Update 2. I must clarify that I have tried to invite them home several times and my grandfather has refused, giving my grandmother excuses as to why they couldn't come. We've invited them to lunch at our house and even offered to pick them up and take them back home, so they didn't have to drive. But my grandfather literally told us that he doesn't feel comfortable eating food that isn't made by my grandmother or a restaurant. I should also clarify that I always help my grandmother cook while I am there. I have tried to bring food twice and it has resulted in great anger from my grandmother, saying that she does not want us to bring anything, and a look of disgust from my grandfather towards the food we have brought. I know firsthand that his financial situation is good because my grandfather usually asks me for help with his phone and he almost always leaves his bank application open. So I have perfectly seen the money he has in one of his banks and it is a lot. And NBSP update October 9th, 2023. Yesterday I went out with my grandmother in the morning. I didn't really know how to approach the subject, but I finally found the time to tell her everything. She didn't believe me at all when I told her. In fact, she told me that she had only agreed to leave the house with me because she thought that my husband and I didn't want to have lunch with them again. We decided to go to my grandparents' house so we could all talk there. Luckily, my grandfather didn't deny anything that happened, but it was evident that he is more than upset with me. My grandmother is very angry with him. I can't help but feel bad thinking that I could be the culprit of that anger. My grandmother spoke clearly to all of us. She let us know that she doesn't enjoy going out that much and that's why she would prefer for lunches with them to be there at her house. She also told us that she doesn't want food or money from us since she only enjoys the simple fact that I help her cook and that we can all enjoy that meal. She told us that she wants those weekly lunches, but that if ever my husband and I can't go, that's okay. She told my grandfather that she felt disappointed with his attitude. Everything seemed to be understood and my husband and I went home. I called my parents and told them what happened. After talking to them, I am sure that my grandfather does not have any mental problems or dementia. He is simply a very unfamiliar person who hardly enjoys spending time with his family. He is quite hypocritical and really only cares about himself. My parents have suffered too much from his attitudes. They even told me how my grandfather had let my father sleep for 3 days on the street since he wouldn't allow him to enter his house for not cutting his hair like he had told him. My father was 21 years old at the time. So my grandfather's personality just sucks. I had always known that he was a bit strange. He has always had favorite children and less favorite children. Same with his grandchildren. My family and I are definitely not one of his favorites. I understand that he is still my grandfather and I am not going to cut off my relationship with him because of it, but I am definitely not going to allow certain attitudes on his part, and even more so after knowing the hell he put my parents through. So for now, Saturday lunches will continue to happen every week at my grandmother's request. I know that my grandparents have not spoken to each other since the conversation we had yesterday. So I do not know how long this angry situation between them will last and how long my grandfather's anger towards my husband and me will last. If anything else happens, I'll keep you guys posted. And NBSP. Reminder, this is a repost sub. I am not oop. The grandfather sounds like a major piece of work and a miserable person to be around. I do feel bad for the grandmother having to deal with someone like this. He tried in every way to please everyone. In this case, everyone was simply Grandpa. Grandpa sound like a miserable, selfish sob. Op did the right thing telling Grandma what Gramps was up to. No wonder he asked then to keep it a secret. He knew she wouldn't be cool with what he was doing. What a selfish asshat. Small wonder the grandmother struggles with depression, with a husband like that. I still don't get why people think it's okay to lie to your spouse and go behind their back like that. That grandfather seems like an awful person to be around. The grandfather seems like he isolates his wife. Whether intentionally or unintentionally. Either that or she's so used to the status quo that she hasn't considered seeking her own avenues of joy. She seems entirely reliant on family visiting for social interaction. I hope Oop keeps having lunch with Grandmom. I had suspicions pretty early that Grandpa was the problem. But I didn't realize how much. It almost sounded like he was trying to finagle money from his grandchildren and hide it from his wife. If Grandma passes first, he will likely find himself very lonely. This is a prime example of how abusers never stop their abuse. This man is so old yet he still abuses and isolates his wife and tries to make her life as miserable as possible. Abusers don't change. They don't become better people or mellow with age. I'm so glad Oop and her husband will continue their meetings with grandmother. This is a very heartbreaking story as the grandma sounds like the sweetest kind of person who's been forced into a lonely sad life by her pa's husband. I had no problem with Oop dialing back on their visits at GP's request, but I'd be damned if I didn't tell GM whose idea it was. Grandpa better be careful. Grandma can act like she wasn't there if he has a spill or a heart attack and needs EMS. Oh dear me. My hearing must be going. I didn't hear him. Wonder what the overlap is on old people who complain that everyone cuts people off too easily nowadays and people with a track record of decades of consequence-free trash behavior. Grandpa sounds like he enjoys playing mind games. As soon as I read he told them not to come, I thought, oh, he's the reason everyone moved away. Don't come. You're giving Grandma depression by coming. Wait. You need to come. Why aren't you coming? I'm so disappointed. You're causing Grandma's depression by not coming. Why did you come? You shouldn't have come. Now you're giving Grandma depression. So confusing. How does any of this make sense in Grandpa's mind? I guess we see why all the children and grandchildren live far, far away from Grandpa. Too bad Grandma gets stuck living with him. Eesh, I have this grandparent. Poor Op, so hard and exhausting to navigate. Maybe suggest that the grandfather do his own thing in the basement or backyard when they come over. He doesn't want to be around them. They don't want to be around him. And now Oop knows why everyone moved as far away as they could.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.